always like it when I can come back. It's one of my favorite places, and now that I've been to Paris a few times, I know my way around the city, and I have my favorite restaurants and my favorite bars that I have to go back to, so it's becoming more and more a very comfortable place for me to be. The reason why I decided to structure it as a chase, basically, where it begins, the chase begins in the first scene and it runs through the whole book. It takes place within 24 hours, the whole book. The reason I decided to construct it like that is because I started out as a short story writer, and in the short stories, plot is not very important. It's more about an emotional experience for the reader. When I began to write novels, I had to learn how to write a plot in order to keep them, because I like novels with plots. I like novels where things happen. So I wanted to write books like that, but having started as a short story writer, I was not so good at plot. So I had to come up, when I sit down to write the novels, I try to come up with the simplest plot possible. So in this case, this was the simplest plot that I could think of to set these people running, and that way the book would have some sort of structure that I could then lay on top of that all the things that I really wanted to write, the things that I'm interested in. I'm not so much interested in plot. It's necessary, but it's not my main interest. My main interest is the characters, the settings, the language. There's a scene in the novel that takes place in a Mexican prison, and I wanted to write about that prison, so I said, well, how can I put that in there? So once I had the structure of the chase, I could then go in and work with the aspects of the novel that interest me more than plot. Well, it's all fiction once it gets to me, because I'm not a reporter. It's all based on fact. I'm not making things up, but I may be pushing it a bit for dramatic effect. But as I said, the character of Malone was a real guy that I read about in the newspaper, so that is reality. It's a reality that there are corrupt border cops down there. Our newspapers tend to write much more about this, because we are close in Los Angeles, so we read a lot more about the border and the trouble going along the border, because it's an issue that is important in that area. For example, in New York, my publishers there, they don't know much about this. It's very exotic to them because their newspapers don't cover it as heavily. So I get to read many things about these corrupt cops, about the cartels, and all those little pieces come into play when you sit down to create the story.